And our first speaker is Jorge Tanguay, who's a professor at the University of Quebec here in Montreal in the Department of Urban Studies and Tourism. He's also Director of Tourism and Heritage Research Center, and his background is as an economist. Over to you, Jorge.
Thank you. So maybe I should sing a song for on a rainy day. So this is, at the start, we thought that the presentation would be in French, so we translated everything at the last minute, so I hope we didn't lose anything in translation. So this is a paper I wrote with Français who's here, and Sana Maliadi, who is here somewhere. I think she left. So if you got questions, maybe they can help me also to answer the questions, since we are 3 others. So the presentation outline is we'll do a short introduction, then I'll cover the literature, show the methodology, the results, and then we'll conclude. So I'm pretty sure you heard about many of these facts I will present at the beginning of this session, okay? So nevertheless, 15% of the world population live with a handicap, 75% of which are elderly people. And according to numbers, the projection, this number in the world should double by 2050. When you look at Canada, Canada is the second country with the highest rate of elderly growth after Japan. So looking at Quebec, okay, so we're going very wide and going at the local level. Projection shows that the group of 65 years old and more will represent 18% of the population in 2016, 23% in 2023, and all the way up to 27% in 2046, according to the Institute of Statistics of Quebec. So, given this, and also given the importance of accessibility and mobility as social integration factors, it calls for the development of more research on these topics. So I take this opportunity to announce that actually yesterday, my center, for which I am the director, the Tourism and Heritage Research Center of Business School of the University of Quebec in Montreal, we officially launched a research program on accessibility with Kerul, actually. So this research program will study things like urban design, transportation, and the economics of accessibility and sustainability. So this is what I like to call a WIP paper. Okay, what is a WIP paper? Okay, it's a work and project paper. Okay, so this is something we're still working on. So we have some results to present to you, obviously. Okay. But nevertheless, more needs to be done. So this is part of the new collaboration program between the CRTP, which is the Centre de Recherche en Tourisme et Patrimoine, sorry, Tourism and Heritage Research Center. It involves 2 professors, me and Professor Bédard, and Sana Maliadi, who is also a postdoctoral student at the center. And the data we'll use in the paper is data from Kerul, and it covers the behavior and attitudes of people with physical disabilities related to tourism. So the goal of the paper is simply to use the questionnaires in order to characterize the factors that can explain the intention to travel for tourism purposes. So if we move on to the literature review, so basically what we did is we needed to establish a theory, a framework, a background, in order to establish the factors that can explain the intent to travel for tourism purposes. So we conducted a review of the scientific literature, and we classified the observations we got. We had so many papers that we read to do these papers. We were able to classify the observations into three main categories relative to travel for tourism purposes. So the three factors that we got are constraints, accessibility, and transport. So if we look at the constraints, so this is a little summary of what we found. We have identified and classified constraints according to the individual constraints, and for example, in terms of attitude or religion, the relational constraints, so, and for example, in terms of social interaction, structural ones related, for example, to money and time, and obviously on top of that, you got the physical, environmental, and economic obstacles. So looking at the accessibility factor, people with reduced mobility encounters accessibility issues. So for example, it's a problem to find accessible destination, to find appropriate accommodations when traveling. Also can be a problem in terms of the interaction with the accommodation staff. Obviously, you can get the help of travel agents, which can facilitate traveling. Another problem may be the poor preparation of tourism employees and the lack of tools to help people with disability. So transportation. So not surprisingly, for people with reduced mobility, transportation is a major issue. So it's a key factor in terms of planning tourism activities. And it's also a key factor to attract tourism to a destination. There are important issues that could exclude some people, for instance, people living in rural areas. So what we do in the paper, so when we move on to the original part of the paper, we use a statistical analysis to validate empirically the three factors that we found in the literature. So these factors, again, are constraints as perceived by people with reduced mobility. And what we show in the paper is that these constraints have a negative effect on their intention to travel. In terms of accessibility, for people with reduced mobility, better accessibility is positively related to their intention to travel. And this is the same thing for in terms of transportation. So the methodology. So first, I will describe the sample that we use. Then we'll move on to the analysis itself. We use what's called a principal component analysis. I'll call that PCA in the presentation. The PCA was used to validate the grouping of the different answers in the questionnaires according to the factors we identify in the literature. Then in the end, we use the factors we identify to run regression analysis to show if they're statistically significant to explain the intention to travel. So if we look at the sample is based on a survey conducted by Kirul in 2011. The sample size is 730 respondents. Answers were provided by phone, internet, and paper. The sample concerns people over 15 years old, residents of Quebec with physical disabilities, and questions were asked regarding tourism. More than 50% of the sample was 55 years old or older, and 26% 65 years old or older. So we should also note that 75% of respondents had mentioned a difficulty to walk, climb stairs, or bend over. So what you have here basically are the questions that were asked to the people who were interviewed. So the first one you got here on top, use the pointer, is the plan to travel. So the questions concerning, do you have planned to travel in the province of Quebec in the near future? So it's a 3-point scale. Also, we had questions concerning accessibility, accessibility to accommodation, availability of information and communication tools, and so on. have questions concerning the use of transportation modes, bus, subway, taxi, train, airplane, and what we call barriers, lack of interest, lack of time, etc. So you got different scales here concerning these different questions. And on top of that, you got some socioeconomic variables that we will use in the paper in order to control for the results of the regression. So if you look at the results, so a principal component analysis, basically what it does, it takes all the questions and it will regroup them in some correlated factors in order to obtain different factors which are not correlated, basically. So if you look at the first one is a factor that we call barriers. And the factor called barriers has some different questions in it, questions related to the lack of interest, lack of time, fitness, financial reason, etc. Okay, so all these questions and answers, they go together and they form one factor. So the second one was tourism accessibility, and the third one was transportation. So basically, what the results tells us here is that the results we found in the literature in terms of showing what are the main large factors explaining intent to travel, they're confirmed by the PCA. Okay, what we can say also is that this analysis is quite sound since, well, in terms of being technical, all axes have what we call good internal consistency. And what we do now is that we use the factors that we have here as variables in what we call in the regression analysis. So if we look to we move to the regression results. So what we did basically, we did a regression on the intention to travel based on the factors that we found in the principal component analysis. So we control for the location of individuals, for the income, for the age, for the sex, and we perform regression based on the factors that we identified. And what the regressions show us is that indeed we find a negative impact, which is a statistically significant impact of barriers on intention to travels, and a positive impact of better accessibility and transportation on the intention to travel. So the what you have here is on this side of the slide, it tells you that the regression explains well the intention to travel, and we explain quite well also the variance of the answer for the intention to travels. You see, the signs of the control variables are all they all have the good sign. The income is positive, having more money goes with a better intention to travel, and age is negative. So the time's quite good, actually. So conclusion. So the principal and component analysis using the questionnaires that we had on the behavior and attitude of people with physical disabilities in tourism for Quebec confirms the existence of the three main factors identified in the literature. So basically what we identify reading, we can prove that statistically that they indeed are grouped together and they play a role in the intention to travel. So constraints, barriers, accessibility, transportation, infrastructures, and services. So then our regression analysis showed that they play a significant role in explaining the intention to travel. So barriers, obstacles have a negative impact, while the accessibility and availability of transportation, service, and infrastructures and services have a positive index. So, well, it's pretty reassuring to see that the results are in line with existing empirical studies on the topic, okay? And what we have and now, that maybe what we would like to do, we would like to do a better analysis of the different variables and factors, for instance, in terms of distance to the transportation modes, for example, And what we add here in the paper is the intention to travel. There's a difference between an intention and an actual traveling, okay? So what we'd like to do now is to do the same thing with what people actually did. So, thank you. Merci.
Thank you very much indeed. I think as there was a lot of detail there, if anyone has any technical questions or points of clarification they want to ask Georges, let's take that now, and then we'll have a general discussion at the end. Does anyone? Yes, we have one there. We should have a microphone somewhere. Yep, gentleman there. Or is it this one we need? Okay, hold on. We might need. No, you've got one there. Right. No. Oh, that is the one. Okay. Gentleman there at the back. If you can keep it brief so we can keep moving.
You hear me okay? Yeah,
Yep.
okay. I just have 18 questions, so it won't take long.
Perfect.
So this off-coded statistic of 15% and 75%, and then by 2050 it's going to be doubled. So 150% of the population will be elderly by 2050? No, but seriously.
Well, you should go back and take a math course maybe, but it's not the answer.
No, more seriously though. So the proportion of handicapped due to aging is going to increase.
Yeah.
There will be a certain proportion of handicapped travelers increasing due to rising wealth levels in certain areas.
Yeah.
But it would seem that the majority is aging.
Yeah.
Okay. The fellow from Britain was able to provide us with statistics in terms of what percentage of the the travel budget in Britain was from day trippers and what percentage was from external people coming in from outside of the country.
Okay.
Do you have any idea whether we have any similar statistics for Quebec?
Oh God, that's a good question. Actually, maybe I should ask my co-author here to. Do you know, François, about the? The answer is no. I don't know. This is a good question. So basically, your question is how many are the travelers? Repeat the question again.
Well, how much of tourism is external? How much is internal? And
okay. This you know. It's,
Yeah, can you need to use the microphone, François, because it's being recorded. So don't speak until you've got the microphone. Voila.
Your question is domestic travel? Okay, it's 75 domestic, 25 international. Okay, and this is not just for Quebec, but in general in North America, in Canada, in the United States, a lot of domestic traveling. It's 75-25 proportion ratio.
actually, that's the answer I had in mind, but.
Okay.
Last item.
Yeah.
So the money and the age, it would appear that there's an inverse relation. But is it just that as you're older you tend to be richer, or did you control for that? And
That's a very good question. Actually, we did not control for that.
okay.
But usually in regression, we did control for that in some way. Because when you look at the correlation matrix, you're not supposed to put in the same regression things that are correlated over 0.7, 0.7 anyway. And I think the correlation was lower than that. Okay, so we did control for that, but there may be something there which biased the coefficients actually.
Okay, thank you. Very good questions. I think we will keep moving, but I hope we'll have time to come back at the end for a more general discussion. Can we? Oh, I'm sorry. Did you want to ask a very, very quick question?
Vous avez regroupé, je vais la poser en français, vous avez regroupé les barrières, autant les barrières au niveau architectural, les barrières au niveau de l'information, puis tout ce qui était comme accueil pour en faire un groupe barrière. Est-ce que vous avez regardé pour voir s'il y en a une de ces trois-là qui avait un plus grand impact sur les intentions de déplacement?
Yes, mais je vais répondre en anglais. For the benefit.
Please, if you could repeat the question in English first.
Yeah, I'll read the question in English. So what she asked is that we had regrouped all the barriers together and the barriers related to different components. And she's asking what are the components with the largest impact. Is that right? Okay, so basically we did not regroup. The analysis or the factorial analysis did it itself. Okay, so this is not a choice. We just run the package and we get the work group together. The second answer now, question, so I need to go back to the
Okay,
slides.
where's
If
the-
you go back to the,
I don't have
No.
the, oh, François has it, okay. But quickly, please, if you could,
so,
for the other speakers.
non, c'est l'autre après, the other one. Yeah, this one. So if you look at the factors here, what it means, the first one in terms of importance is lack of interest, lack of time, and so on. So they just decrease by the largest impact to the lowest impact. But what you can see here is that they're very, very, oh no, actually it's not true what I just said. They're not ranked in, they rank, so anyway, the largest is the largest impact. So the more impact is lack of transportation. Then you got fear of places or being suitable, lack of interest, and the smallest one is financial reasons. So this we can provide with the paper later. That's a good question too.
Quality of the questions is
Yeah,
excellent.
yeah, yeah.